Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, we are all searching for ways to better evaluate players in order to give meaningful feedback. Over 15 years ago, I put together a test called the JAMODI Skill Rating. The JSR takes players through a series of tests involving basketball skill or athleticism, giving them one rating at the end. Their JSR rating will give you clarity on what needs to be discussed with players and parents on areas they need to focus on improving. I test our players at least 4 times each year. They're able to compete against each other, past players' scores, and most importantly, their past performances. If you'd like to start testing your athletes, email me at jamodipodcast@gmail.com for more information.
Playing loose is something that I would love for my teams to do, but I've always wondered, like, how do I get them there? And so is it before a game, how serious do we need to be? How focused do they need to be? Are they a team that if they're joking around a little bit before the game, like they can still come out and perform and and loose doesn't mean lazy, right? But how do you go about before games knowing like where they need to be? Is it like you said, is it dependent on the year and on the team? Is there a way that you'd like for them to be focused and ready to go, or do you leave it up to them?
Sure, there's some indicators on game day if they're focused or not, but the biggest fight that we have is we want the game to feel easy. And I've never gotten to watch a UConn practice, but I know that like that's a Hurley approach in terms of, those guys get after it in practice, and then when they get out there in the game, when it feels easier out there, then I think guys loosen up. So regardless if guys are a little bit uptight or not in our games, if we were able to string together 2 or 3 good weeks of practice and feel like we were tough on them without going berserk, but we just want to make sure that the game feels like the easiest part of the week for you. And if you do that, then I'm not going to have to try to make up some speech or anything like that. Just when the ball gets thrown up out there, you're going to feel like it's a little bit slower than it was the previous 2 or 3 days.
How many of those big speeches do you feel like you have in you in a season before they stop listening?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm the inexperienced one here. You probably know that better than me, but I think that it probably depends on the season.
I've never won a state championship, Coach. I'm just saying, I don't know about the experience part, and you're a darn good player. So yeah, no, keep going.
Oh man, there's 3 or 4 times this year where I got a little fired up, and I'm usually pretty calm. So I think the guys, they got a kick out of it too. But again, there was a point in this season where we weren't playing great early in the year, and we were playing at St. Thomas, and I said a few things in the locker room, and one of our big guys was not rolling, and I just started screaming at him to roll, and we came out in the second half and played fine, ended up winning the game, and like the guys and their parents were both laughing with me after the game about it, joking around, and so that's when I was like, man, we've got a pretty emotionally intelligent type of team here. If they can take some criticism in the game and then joke about it afterward and not think that I'm, just completely psycho. So
that's a good place to be. Balance is hard. Mike Neighbor said, don't try to have balance. It's impossible, but I've made a lot of mistakes over the years of, spending too much time either up at the school or even when I come home, not disconnecting. So like maybe I'm here, but I'm on huddle here, or I'm doing something here. So how do you balance coaching? Because you've been at all different levels in your family life.
Yeah, my parents were a great example for me and my brother. My dad worked all over the place, and I think he probably announced some of your games in the Big 12, and did a great job of making every effort he could to get to games, though. Like I knew he was taking a connecting flight and landing and hustling to a game that started 30 minutes after the plane landed, and Then he'd drive us all home from a big tournament that summer where, it took him, a day to get there. And so anyway, the effort that my dad made, the effort that my mom made, getting me to different places, and then like just watching how they treated each other. Um, they were very authentic. It wasn't fake. They let us see them care about each other. They let us see whenever they would argue here and there, and it just really made me value the relationship for whoever I ended up marrying. And then my wife I mean, she's great about letting me know when I'm in outer space and still thinking about basketball. But last year, Marty McGillen gave me a really good quote. I think it might have been from one of his mentors or coaches. And he said, when you finish practice and you're driving home, pick a spot on your drive home, whether it's a billboard or a store or a sign. And at some point, when you see that landmark, your brain should switch over to being at home and being whatever you are, a husband, a father. And then, you're able to do the same thing coming back out when you head to the gym. But I thought that was really good on at some point when you leave practice, there needs to be a trigger to being like, all right, am I shutting it off for the next 3 hours to, be present here at dinner with my family? And then maybe I got to get to something at night, but I got to compartmentalize if I really care about my relationships.
I love that. That's a great nugget that I need to find. I need to find something on the way home that's helpful. And David Peeler from Highland Park, in our hoops talk, he said something about there's a sign that he has in his garage right up above the door, and he says, "Don't fail at the job that only you can do." Like
I
as
like that.
great as you are, and me at Faith and anybody anywhere, if we leave, someone else is going to take that job. And someone else is going to do their very, very best. But here, with our kids, with our spouse, uh, it's only us that can do that, and we can't fail. But man, I definitely, these are all reminders for myself, because I want things to be excellent. I want to make the big time where we are, but then it can't be. It just goes back to your faith. I mean, who's really in charge of your life? Like if you rip open your chest, think when you and I were younger, just based on the player that you were, probably basketball at some point was God of our life. Whether we realized it or not, even growing up as believers. But man, how
Oh,
easy is
absolutely.
it for this job, our team, our season, even at the high school level, at 5A taps, it can become the most important thing to us. And then all of a sudden, our walk is failing and failing with others. I need to find that billboard, that restaurant, that when I pass it, I'm able to disconnect. And do you have a spot like that?
Yeah, and I live about 3 minutes from the school, so I got to figure it out pretty quick.
Quick, quick, quick.
And
That's
we
good.
we don't have kids yet, and so for me, it's at like 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes I'm getting some stuff done, but I know that when I get home at 6, there needs to be a 3-4 hour window where I'm really present, and then if I got to get to some stuff later on, I can. But I think it's different for
Yeah.
everybody on how they kind of situate their day. Is there anything over your years of coaching that you've pivoted to or that's really stuck with you?
In this arena of
Yeah.
balancing,
Yeah.
well, I'll give my wife credit on this one. Um, so going from McKinney High as a varsity assistant, and I was single for the first 4 years of that, and then met her for the last year. And I believe God put her in my life, catalyst for change. It's kind of like there's a pre-Jana part of my life and then post-Jana, and very thankful for the post. And so, when I got the job at Faith, and I was 30 years old, and I thought, okay, now that I'm a head coach, I'm going to be all in with my time. I'm going to eat and sleep this. This is all I'm going to do. And so I was at a 24-hour fitness working out And I was kind of going through this mindset of like how hardcore I was going to be as a coach, the guy that nobody outworked and all this stuff. And so I called her and we're talking. I said, babe, I just wanted to let you know that, this starts at Faith, like I'm going to be spending a lot of time up there. Like I'm going to be doing a lot because that's what it takes. And there's like this pause on the phone. And she said, Matt, like cause this is my second marriage is her second marriage as well. And she just said, I've already lived that before. Like I'm not doing that. And it was just kind of this moment, like one, I would never want to hurt her feelings or make her feel less than or make her feel alone or lonely. But it was like this sincerity that she said it kind of melted that whole idea of what I thought I needed to be as a head coach was kind of gone. Like in that moment of, okay, now I don't know where she is in here. She's probably listening like, whatever, like you're always gone, or always thinking about things. But she's also, it's helped having my son at Faith that I've been coaching him all the way through. So she's been as invested, especially as he's been in high school. But that's just always something that I've remembered of like, no, I'm not going to let the profession, the job take the place of her. And then more importantly, and that's where kids like Jax, that remind me of how important my walk is. When basketball starts to feel so big and I'm stressing out about it so much, most likely my walk isn't where it should be. I'm not in the word as much. I'm not listening to worship music. I'm so fixated on this. And I don't care what level you are. If you care and you want to be excellent and you want to do your very, very best, then there's going to be a certain amount of attention that goes to it. But man, like Coach Peeler's sign, like nothing should make us fail in the spot that God has us here at home. And so I don't know if it's like a thing that I necessarily did as much as she set the path of what this was gonna look like. And again, I've failed over the years a ton, sleepless nights a ton, and then but just trying to remember that.
Yeah, that's great. While you were talking about that, it did remind me that you know, I, I've been very lucky to always work for people that care about their faith and their family. And so I've never really been put in an environment where I slipped out of that route. And so I think over the years, it's been very helpful just to watch, guys like Griff Aldrich and Carson Cunningham and Mark Utley and Ryan Mark, like everybody that I've played and coached for really cares about keeping the main thing, and that's been super helpful.
We need to help our players do that too. It's our job, but it's their game. And I think we can put so much pressure on how big this moment is, how big the game is coming up, or how every day and every moment. I believe all these things. Every moment is important. Like we're trying to be 1-0 today. Like I like all those ideas. But who was it? Tobin Anderson when they were making that great run that in the press conference said like our idea is 2-22, 2-22, and he was like 2 hours of the day we are all in on basketball and the other 22 we're not thinking about it at all. And I love that. Like I think it's maybe impossible, but the idea, especially with our players, of hey, these 2 hours that we talked about with film, right? Like short attention spans. Hey, but for these 2 hours though, hour and a half, however you go, all in, all focus, letting everything else go. The test you have, the date you have, the opponent we have, like all in here. But then disconnect, go be a kid, play Fortnite, study, hang out. Tomorrow will take care of itself. And I think that 2-22, I've never really made that a thing at our school or with our team. But I think the older I get and the more I do it, I believe in that more and more. We'd probably have happier players if we were encouraging them to disconnect more. That doesn't mean care less, right?
Oh yeah, totally. I think that's the questions: who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? How often throughout the day can you stay present in what you're actually doing?
I just chuckling because I thought I never want to on here. I never want to try to act like like I have things figured out, or like I really that I know I have answers. And just the whole thing with Jan, like I loved your question back to me because I get to ask all these, but I rarely answer them. And so, but just thinking like, what would she say? Like, what would she say how I've done the last 12 years in that arena of balancing life? And maybe that's a something that we need to do is because we check in with our players. We ask them how they're feeling about the culture. Hey, what's the pulse of the team right now? It's a great question to ask some of your leaders. But how often do I ask her? And maybe I don't ask her because I don't really want to. I'm terrified to know the answer. But that's sorry, I was just chuckling a little bit of like, dude, you sound like you. She said this and you got it. And you've never. No, I don't know if I do it right.
No, you're right. You're right. Sometimes I think I pat myself on the back because I realize like, okay, I've zoned out for the last half hour, and I'm going to apologize and that kind of thing. But I probably am scared to ask her sometimes of how often this happens and how much work I need to do in that arena.
Yeah. Thankfully, she's been super honest with me over the years with coaching of like, man, because she does my book most of the time. So it's like, yeah, it was a great game. I thought you coached really well. Oh, thank you. But then there's times where, especially as Landon has kind of gotten into the high school and through our program, she would say, Matt, your face tonight, your face, just not I'm like, oh, that hurts my feelings, but thank you. I need to hear it. You got to have that person in your life.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.